The sounds of my generation. America today is a scary place. Tanks and fighter jets parading in Washington, D.C. The National Guard and the U.S. Marine Corps facing civilian protesters on the streets of Los Angeles. Executive orders invoked to rearrange the federal government, to revamp foreign policy, and to remove and imprison immigrants without trial. Judicial rulings and orders callously ignored. This is our reality. The Trump 2.0 team is orchestrating a massive play to consolidate power in the office of the president under the control of the one man. And they and he are succeeding in a huge way, at least so far. Every concerned and committed American must worry deeply about the direction our government is taking and the future it portends. I fear a tipping point, maybe not too far in the future, after which the path towards authoritarian rule will move forward unabated. Our mission is to do everything we can to keep this from transpiring, to preserve the democratic essence of American politics, to save the constitutional soul of our national union. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. How many of you engaged in one way or another in the No Kings protests and actions yesterday? And that's another reason so many people aren't here. They're tired. Our local effort was one of over 2,000 such gatherings across the nation. Thousands of people standing up to claim that they believe this administration is acting in a manner opposed to our interests. Thousands of people stepping forward to say the thing that no Republican senator or congressman is willing to say. Donald Trump is wrong, and what he is doing to our government is wrong. And as grim as the situation might appear, it's important to know that we need not abandon hope, because thousands of reasons to hold hope remain, burning bright. Many of them were on the streets yesterday. The opportunity to bring positive change still exists and will continue to exist as long as we have voice and as long as we have votes. This is what we must protect, our capacity to speak out and our right to vote. Yet, these key rights, fundamental as they are in our democracy, are themselves threatened. Our challenge today is to keep the voice of protest loud and clear for at least a little over a year, at least through the 2026 midterm elections. And then we'll have a better idea of where we sit. I have no clear idea about how our rights will be challenged and restricted, but I assume that those now in power will not let their ascendancy slip away without contest. And all trends suggest that this is what would happen if the status quo persists. Anger grows each week as the government flounders and Trump reveals himself to be the emperor with no clothes. So we must stay vigilant and we must stay loud. We are called on to resist this government until such time as it begins to honor and respect the basic rights of all citizens, until it expresses concern for the weaker and less privileged among us, until it restores basic medical and support services to those that are losing them today. I don't know how this administration will try to hold on to control, what strategy they might dream up to protect their power, but I am convinced that they do not want to see a fair fight at the ballot box. Voting access will be challenged, districts manipulated, and opponents slandered. And I can imagine worse, maybe a suspension of elections for some manufactured emergency. The fact is, I don't know anything except that recent history predicts that they will deal chaos in some form and that they will grab power and try to retain power in any way they can. We must be wary. We must be prepared. We still need to do the things we already know: protest, speak out, work to influence and bend the arms of our local politicians, and donate our money and time to the cause. And we may be called on to do more. Specifically, we need to be ready to shift from a posture of resistance of Donald Trump to one of actively defying his regime. Defiance is open resistance through disobedience and opposition. Defiant acts transcend expectation and often break laws. They are grounded in a moral reckoning that impels us beyond what is considered normative or legal. They live out values that we assign a highest priority, values we believe in and know to be right. Is it hard to think of ways that you might act with defiance, where you might break a law and risk punishment to do something you feel is right? It's hard to know. History is full of examples of martyrs and protesters and people that we now honor for engaging in defiant acts, things that led to major changes in the world. That's sort of all of history. Change happens because somebody precipitates it. In 1930, Mohandas Gandhi organized a salt march in protest of British taxation of salt and in protest of colonial rule in India. This started a process that eventually led to independence, and as we know, that introduced the world to peaceful resistance. In 1955, Rosa Parks refused to move from her seat on the bus in Montgomery, Alabama. Her arrest and the boycott that followed marked the real beginning of the civil rights movement. In 1989, one man, still unknown, the Tank Man, a lone pedestrian who stood his ground and blocked a convoy of tanks at Tiananmen Square in China during the student revolts. And there were somewhat smaller episodes, but just as visually poignant. Tommy Smith and John Carlos standing on the Olympic podium in 1968 in Mexico City. The crewmen from the USS Pueblo, which had been captured by the North Koreans, subtly giving the finger every time that they were photographed, unbeknownst to their captors, clearly communicating displeasure and a sense of personal control. And you may have seen this photograph from 1936. I think it was a group of longshoremen in Poland or somewhere like that, where there was masses, hundreds of people hailing Hitler, and one man firmly standing with his arms crossed in defiance. One man out of 1,000. That was August Landmesser, and he was upset because he was married to a Jewish woman. And acts of defiance, they can be personal, they can be small. I always thought my mother was sort of a mouse-ish person. She was many things, including a Girl Scout leader, which is really funny. And then one day she came to me and she said, "Alan, I have a girl in my group who's having real problems at home. She's going to stay with us for now. And The police are going to come and try to take her away. And if they're going to take her home, I won't let them. So I might be arrested. I've never seen that stiffness in my mother before. And I've never forgotten it. What puts anyone in a state of mind to engage in acts of defiance? Each brings some or maybe a lot of resistance to a person. Why do such things? And the answer from them usually ends up being something like, I did it because I needed to. Last night, we viewed a powerful documentary film called The Sharps' War, Defying the Nazis. It related the story of a Unitarian minister and his wife who were instrumental in helping many Jewish refugees escape from Czechoslovakia and France as these places came under control of Hitler and the Nazis. Reverend Waite-Still Sharp and Martha Sharp are bona fide Unitarian Universalist heroes. They answered the call and met a need with courage and skill. And they did this work at a very high personal risk and eventually a great emotional cost. Their efforts were in direct defiance of a system they saw as unjust and evil. Waite-Still explained some of his activity by saying, I know it was illegal. I did it because I had no other choice. I was beyond the pale of civilization. I owed no ethics to anybody. I owed no honesty to anybody at all if I could save imperiled human lives. The Sharps' values and their personal beliefs compelled them to persist in these efforts of freeing refugees, both adults and children. Their daughter explained that they never viewed what they did as extraordinary. They were modest and ordinary people, she claimed. They responded to the suffering and needs around them as they would have expected anyone to do in a similar situation. It has been claimed that there are no great people in the world, only great challenges which ordinary people rise to meet. We might debate whether the Sharps were extraordinary people or whether they just happened into an exceptional role in history. But the point is really moot. What they did was exceptional. What is clear is they responded to a system of hatred and inequity with direct actions of defiance, that they devised and implemented strategies, first in Prague and then in Vichy, France, through which they could bring some repair to a part of the world that was broken. The challenges of Nazi occupation and the genocidal actions against the Jews were deeply threatening. But instead of paralyzing Waite-Still and Martha, it helped them discover who they truly were and what really mattered to them in life. Waite-Still explained to one Jewish intellectual that he had led out of France. I believe that the will of God is to be interpreted by the liberty of the human spirit. That is how he found meaning in his work. There is so much more in the story of the Sharps' war, and I commend the film to any of you, and if you're interested, I can provide access. But let's come back to the present. The path of Donald Trump's presidency, likely guided by Project 2025 folks, is spiraling towards increased inequality and unfairness, and likely authoritarianism. We have seen fascism, and we know to fear its power. According to almost every value that I hold, and that most of us share, this path is morally wrong, morally bankrupt. It violates most of the ideals on which our nation was built and threatens injustice and suffering for our futures and our children's futures. It's essential that this course be changed. and that reason, morality, and compassion reclaim lofty roles in our national agenda. And it will take us, each and every one of us, working alone and working together to have a chance of success in this mission. And what is also important is that we each do our own work, our inward work, to remind ourselves what it is we really care about and why that is so. What is important in improving the lives of ourselves and all others. We need to hold our focus on the worth and dignity of every human life, on the importance of shared justice. We care about giving everyone a chance to flourish by providing them with things like education, healthcare, economic stability, and physical security. These are our goals. And however you think of these things, however it is that you hold meaning, and how you hold human morality in your own minds and hearts, it's imperative that you really do internalize these feelings, these concerns, your passions. For if you are comfortable with yourself, then you will be far better to react to the opportunities to change the course of our nation and our world. You will be in a position to do that rare and important thing that might feel like something that anybody would do if you're given the chance. It is far easier to be right and to do the right thing if you are well grounded in values you accept and understand. It's far easier to be compassionate and true to others if you can be compassionate and true to yourself. We must each become prepared mentally and spiritually to do the work that will sustain us and others into the future. For as much as Martha and Waitstill Sharp felt that they were ordinary people cast into an extraordinary situation, this wasn't really the case. They were not ready for this work, but in so many ways they were each prepared for it by their own lives and commitments they had already made. When the Unitarian Association approached Waitstill and asked him to act on their behalf in Czechoslovakia, they had to tell him that 16 other ministers they had thought more likely to take up this charge, had already turned down the assignment. So we see how truly special he was. Recalling the words of Frederick Douglass, power concedes nothing without demand. It never did, it never will. We want to defy power when it is used for wrong. We must defy power when it is used for wrong. Let us prepare to do so. Amen.